Hey there, friends. Pull your blanket in close and lean a little nearer to the fire. And now let me ask you something. Have you ever heard footsteps following you, but no one was there? Have you ever seen something in the dark, something with too many teeth, eyes too old for any living thing, and hands that didn't belong to a person anymore? Tonight, we are traveling across the endless, windswept steppes of Central Asia, right into the heart of Kazakhstan, where legend and nightmare dance under the same moonlight, and where something ancient waits just outside the warmth of your fire. She is called Zhalmauyz Kempir, a witch with 1,000 faces, a demon in the shape of a grandmother. And if the wind starts whispering your name tonight, do not look back, because she already knows where you sleep. The city of Oral rests on the western edge of Kazakhstan, brushing shoulders with Russia, a place where Cossack history, Soviet ruins, and modern malls all share space with stories older than time. In autumn, Oral turns amber and ash gray. The trees shed their coats in silence. Fog rolls in from the Ural River like a ghost on horseback, and the streets begin to hum with the kind of stillness that makes you check over your shoulder. It is the kind of city where old stories cling to the walls. And it was here that Aruzan, a 17-year-old, arrived for her first year at a humanitarian college, a dorm-based institution known for its literature and folklore studies. She was a soft-spoken but sharp-eyed, with her long black hair usually tied in a braid, like her grandmother used to wear. Her family lived in a village out in the east, and this was her first time in the big city, with new people, new routine, and new independence. The college campus sat beside a crumbling Orthodox church turned museum, and the student dormitory that was once a Soviet workers' hostel was a long concrete building with narrow corridors and peeling walls. The rooms were small, two to a unit, and always smelled of floor polish and old dust. Her roommate, S, was local, cheeky, sarcastic, and always bored of everything. The place is haunted, we smoked the first night. They say room 313 was sealed up in the 90s. A girl went mad, scratched her face off. You believe that? Aruzan laughed, but not too loud. She didn't want to seem superstitious. That night, she dreamed of footsteps in snow, but in the morning, there was no snow outside. A week passed. Aruzan was adjusting. Classes were intense but rewarding, especially the one on regional mythology. Her professor, Begzat Aspanov, had a wrinkled face that seemed carved out of dry earth. He often went off script. Beware, Zhalmauyz Kempir, he said one foggy morning. She does not come as a monster. She comes as a kindness. A voice in the walls, a shadow with your mother's voice. That's how she feeds. The students chuckled nervously. That night, Arzan stayed up, reading in the room's common room. She loved the quiet. Around midnight, something tickled her ear. Just wind, she thought. But when she leaned toward the window, a soft, rasping whisper reached her from the hallway. It wasn't S. It wasn't anyone she knew. It was low and ancient. She opened the hallway door, and nothing was there. Only the dim emergency bulb at the end of the corridor flickered. The building seemed to hold its breath. When she turned back into the room, a face, a withered, half-smiling face, flashed behind the frosted glass of the stairwell, then gone. She slammed the door. The whispers continued every night. At first, Aruzan thought it was just a prank. Then she noticed her textbooks being moved, her mirror fogging with strange symbols, curved lines like twisted crow's feet. One day after class, she asked Professor Begzat if room 313 really existed. He paused. It was sealed after a fire, he said. Years ago, a girl named Kamshat, top of her class, was found locked inside with no burns, but her heart had stopped. They said she clawed her way up to the walls, trying to escape something that no one else saw. But who sealed the room? Bigzat's eyes darkened. Not the school, the elders. The building was a hospital before it was a dorm that was used during the war. And that room was always cold, always hungry. Aruzan found the door. Room 313 was down a side hall behind a stack of cleaning supplies. The door had no knob, only faded red chalk marked the number. That night, the whispers returned, but this time they were coming from inside her room. Aruzan, my beautiful girl, come to me. She turned. S was sleeping, and in the corner, the mirror pulsed back. You still with me, right, friends? Because from here, things get darker. Much, much darker. So the wind outside was still, but inside the mirror it was moving. Aruzan stared at the glass above her desk. Something black and watery twisted in the reflection like oil spreading beneath the surface. Then, a pair of eyes. Old eyes, yellowed like candle wax, watching her from the inside. She blinked, and it was gone. The room was silent except for his rhythmic breathing. Arzan slowly got out of her bed and approached the mirror. Her own reflection was pale and flickering under the dome's weak light. She placed a trembling hand against the glass. It was ice cold. And then, clear as a bell, you have her eyes. Arzan leapt back, heart hammering. She clutched the blanket tight around her and didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, the whisper had vanished. The mirror was normal again, but something about the corner of the room didn't feel empty anymore. Aruzana spent her lunch break in the college library, surrounded by dusty books and forgotten manuscripts. Then she asked the librarian, Miss E, a woman with silver braids and a habit of muttering under her breath. Zhalmauyz Kempir, Miss E whispered, setting her tea aside. Why are you poking at that child? Aruzan shrugged. I heard stories that she whispers. Miss E crossed herself in the Kazakh Muslim fashion, a subtle gesture, hand brushed over heart. She is not just a ghost. She's an old thing, older than Islam, older than Tangari. She walks in shadow when the step goes silent, when the ancestors no longer watch over me. She opened a folio and turned it to a charcoal sketch. A hunched woman with hair like snakes, her mouth fringed with sharp iron teeth. Some say she's a cannibal witch. Others say she's a spirit, one who pretends to be a grandmother or a teacher until she can feed on fear. Her favorite prey are girls who are lonely. Aruzan swallowed. And how do you stop her? Miss E stared into her tea. You don't look her in the eyes, and you never, ever answer when she calls your name. Aruzan left her desk light on. She tried reading, she played music, she even FaceTimed her brother back home. when the building settled for the night and only the pipes clicked in the walls, the whispers came back. Horizon, sweet thing, come open the door. Her throat tightened. From the mirror, a faint knock. Tap, tap, tap. This time, the voice was softer, gentler. It sounded like her own mother. It's me, darling. Mama, I miss you. She stood. Something in her bones screamed not to, but she inched toward the mirror, and again there were eyes in the reflection, but this time they weren't her own. They blinked out of sync with her. And then a mouth, smiling without warmth. Her mother's voice whispered again, "Let me in." Monday morning, a new rumor buzzed through campus. A second-year student, Madina, had been hospitalized. She was found scratching at the walls, whispered someone in the class. She kept muttering something about the old woman behind the mirror. Professor Begzat looked grim. "She's the third this year," he muttered. "This place was never properly cleansed." Arzan raised her hand. "Sir, who was Kamshat?" The room fell silent. Begzat slowly removed his glasses and said, "She was one of my brightest students, obsessed with folklore, and said she wanted to meet the spirits firsthand." He sighed and said, "She locked herself in room 313 one night, left behind pages of symbols and a mirror with her own blood painted on it." Aruzan returned to her room. She decided to cover the mirror with her grandmother's scarf, which she had brought from home. The fabric was embroidered with protective symbols like eyes, stars, and swirls from ancient Turkic culture. That first night, the whispers stopped, but the second night, they came from the closet instead. "You can't hide me, sweet girl. I live in the cracks. I live in the places your light forgets." When Aruzan pulled open the door, nothing, just shoes. Except her shoes were facing backward. The final straw came when Aruzan woke up one morning to find herself standing in the hallway. She had no memory of getting up, and she was standing in front of room 313. This time, the door was slightly open. Inside was dust, soot, and a broken mirror on the wall. "Aruzan, you already opened the door. You just don't remember." She ran. You're still with me, right? Because the next part is where she stops whispering and starts talking. Gather closer to the fire because here comes the final act of our Kazakh horror tale. Aruzan barricaded her door, desk against the knob, mirror covered, Quranic verses taped to the wall. Even her grandmother's scarf now hung from the ceiling like a protective talisman. But she couldn't sleep because something had followed her home. That night, it didn't whisper, it sang. Low and hoarse, like someone with sand in their throat. A lullaby that didn't sound human. "Ari, Ari, sweet child, I see. The step remembers, and so do we." And when Aruzan turned to the mirror, the scarf had fallen. The glass was black, and then it blinked. Aruzan had had enough. She went back to the library, to Miss E, to the professors, and to the archives, and that's when she discovered the hidden file, buried in a folder marked Kempirna Hatianlar, which is of the old steppe. Inside were photos of girls from 1983, from 1987, even as far back as 1921. Each one disappeared or institutionalized, all from the same part of Oral, all living in dorms built on land that used to be an abandoned sanatorium during the Soviet era. And all had written the same word in notebooks before they vanished: Zhalmauyz. According to the journal of a Soviet stenographer, Dr. Morozov, the creature was part of a recurring delusion pattern among Kazakh girls aged 14 to 22, and they called it hysterical possession. But the field notes said something else. All victims speak of a woman in the mirror with black teeth, many arms, and that pretends to be your mother. Morozov went missing a year later. Now, Aruzan recorded a voice memo on her phone. If anything happens to me, it's real. The mirror, room 313, she is in there. She talks like my mother, but she is not. She sent it to her brother. Then she took salt, a rope, a cracked old mirror from the trash, and walked into the room 313. Aruzan stepped inside. The air was too still. She lit a candle, drew a circle of salt, and sat cross-legged in the center. She held her grandmother's scarf tight in her lap and said, "If you're real, show yourself." First it was silent, then a crack. The broken mirror on the wall bent inward, as if something behind it breathed out. A ripple spread through the glass, and then she stepped out. At first, she looked human, a woman in her 50s wearing a headscarf, smiling sweetly. But then her limbs stretched, bones cracking, arms unfolding unnaturally. Her mouth widened into a toothy ring of iron and bone, and her eyes bloomed across her forehead like fungus. She had 7 faces, and they all spoke in harmony. "You called me child. Now you will feed me as the others did." Aruzan stood. Her knees shook. "I didn't call you. You came for me." The witch hissed. "You looked, you listened. That is the invitation." Then she lunged. The next morning, they found the door to room 313 wide open. Inside was no girl, no blood, just an unbroken circle of salt. And Aruzan's scarf tied in a perfect knot on the floor. The mirror was shattered, and every shard was blank, no reflection at all. Her phone was found weeks later in a gutter near the river. The voice memo was the last thing on it. So friends, the dormitory still stands in Oral, Kazakhstan. Room 313 is boarded up now, but they say when the wind dies and you stare too long into a mirror, Zhalmauyz Kempir will stare back. And if you hear your mother's voice calling your name, make sure she has a shadow. Make sure she blinks, or else you might be the next whisper in the mirror. Thanks for sticking through the chilling Kazakh legend with me, friends. Have you ever heard of Zhalmauyz Kempir before, or experienced something eerie with mirrors, or dreams, or something like a shapeshifter? Let me know down in the comments. You can even email me. I will update that in my channel description. And do not forget to subscribe if you love eerie stories from around the world, and share this video with someone who loves folklore and midnight horrors. Leave a comment where I should go next, maybe your country. And remember, if something calls your name from the dark, do not answer back. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you around the fire in our next tale.